Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a classic TFL old versus new off-road mashup review. Or is it old versus older, Tommy? Because what do we got?
Yeah, we've got our 2004 Land Rover Discovery 2 and our 2006 Land Rover LR3. And in this video, we're going to take them both off-road to find out which one is better up the Cliffhanger 1.0 trail.
Cliffhanger 2.0 is much harder than Cliffhanger 1.0, but we brought him here because we wanted to kind of have a very small yet steep hill to demonstrate each vehicle's ability. And really, this is what makes it tricky, getting up and over these routes. So that's the question. Will the new one, well, new old one, struggle over this using all of its technology versus the old one, which will just do it the old-fashioned way with momentum and coil springs?
The old truck here actually has a very basic four-wheel drive system. It's got a big lever here that allows you to switch from high range to low range, and then it even has a center diff lock. But the reason it can rely on such an old system is because underneath it's got the bones of a classic off-roader, solid axles, body on frame construction. So your basic four-wheel drive works just fine. Now let me show you just how advanced that LR3 is over this old truck. Land Rover realized that, well, for the model year 2005, the LR3 had to be a lot more advanced to compete with more modern and luxurious SUVs. So they went to an independent suspension with air height adjustment. But of course that meant that in theory you'd lose a lot of the off-road capability. But what they came out with was a very pioneering system back in the day, which is terrain response. So using this little dial here, I can change the programming of not only the suspension, but the transfer case and the traction control to distribute power where it needs to go in the best possible way. That old Land Rover does have traction control, but it's super rudimentary. This system means that in theory, this old beast can still go anywhere that Disco 2 can. Okay, here we go up the hill in the Land Rover Discovery 2. Old school four-wheel drive system here. Slightly lifted. Both of these Land Rovers are slightly lifted with slightly larger tires. Of course, this has just a taller coil spring, but I'm coming up to the route, taking it nice and slow. Good performance, actually. Center diff is locked, plenty of torque in the low range, and you can feel that traction control system work. It's a little bit crude in its operation, so it takes a little bit of spinning before anything happens. Now both of these have slightly worn off-road tires and they're both larger than stock, so it's fairly apples to apples as well. But, I mean, I just crawled my way up, fully aired up, no issues whatsoever. This thing is immensely capable, and it's not quite as refined as that old one in that it kind of bounces and jolts along, but when you have to get the job done, this, in my opinion, is the better way to do it. It's just got, you know, old school tech that does what you need to do. A terrible turning radius, which you'll find up here. Horrible turning radius, actually. And this actually has a super early version of hill descent control as well, believe it or not. So we'll try that coming down. Engage hill descent. Hill descent is on. Oh my god, it's way too fast. Holy cow. Wow, that is not effective, and there's no speed adjustment. But what I love about these old solid axle rigs is, check this out, there's just so much articulation with them. They just flex like absolute craziness, which is huge when you're off-road, and it's probably one of the more underrated things about these old school off-roaders. It's just the amount of articulation that you get. Now, of course, a tremendous amount of ground clearance as well with this Terra Firma lift and these slightly larger Goodyear tires. Oh yeah, thing's a monster. Hill descent is crap though.
So guys, me and you need to talk because a lot of you out there are looking for affordable off-roaders, and these two are great. But, and this is a big but, there is a slight problem. This Land Rover Disco 2 came before this LR3, and you might be wondering, why didn't they call this a Land Rover Disco 3? And the reason is the reputation for reliability of the Disco 2 was so horrible that they had to rename this one to LR3. So $5,000 versus $7,000. Older tech versus newer tech.
I'm actually going to call bogus on this whole unreliability thing, because our 2004 Land Rover here with 154,000 miles has been absolutely bulletproof for the last 10,000 miles we've owned it. And under the hood, you'll find a 4.6 liter V8 that's originally an old Buick engine actually, and it has been remarkably low cost to maintain. We've had to do nothing out of the ordinary. But of course, an engine that dates back to 1961 wasn't gonna last forever. So the LR3 has a much newer power plant. This is actually the AJ V8, a 4.4 liter V8 from a Jaguar, because this was during the Ford era of ownership. And this engine is actually known for being surprisingly robust. It's the rest of what is attached to this engine that might be a little problematic.
I'm in low range, I'm in rock mode.
Okay, we got a guy coming through.
All right, here we go.
He's got two foot drive.
All right. Oh, he's got 2 foot drive. I'll let him go down first. The cool thing about this truck, of course, is that it does everything for you. Well, it doesn't drive for you, but you know, it figures out where the traction is, and it figures out where the traction is. So conceivably, this should be cake. I should just let the truck do all the work. Now, this is a big old truck. It's heavy, it's got a lot of mass, and that's gonna make it a little trickier. Now, we didn't air down because, well, quite frankly, we didn't think we needed air down. So here we go, up the hill, using all that torque of this Jaguar engine, using those off-road tires for maximum traction. And here comes the first one, first rut. It struggled a little bit, but not much. Here comes the second. Oh, it just put the suspension in extended mode, and this thing is actually struggling more than I think the Disco 2 is. I think it may have to do with its mass. But it's figuring it out. It's figuring it out. It's just taking a little bit more time. Oh, almost stuck. Came unstuck again. Certainly an interesting experience. I'd call that fun. But I'd call it not as good as the old truck. The one thing I would say is, really, I think the difference is just the mass of this thing. You know, there's a lot to be said for not being that heavy when you're either in a race car, sports car, or a dedicated off-roader. Mass is just always the enemy of performance, be it traditional race car or sports car performance or off-road performance. But in general, I gotta tell you, I am impressed. The feeling I walk away with after taking this up and over some of these relatively steep obstacles is, I feel like Land Rover probably made this vehicle a little bit more street friendly, a little bit more family friendly, shall we say, because this will seat 3 rows of your family and a little bit less off-road worthy. But having said that, it's still pretty darn good. More of an overlander and less of an off-roader. That's probably the best way I would say that these two are separated.
It's like a whole head's worth. More than a head's worth.
Yeah, before we went up the hill, Tommy, don't do that, because that could come down and crush your head.
Yeah, that's a really bad idea.
Yeah, it's a really bad idea. You know how much room there was, right? Now look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. In rock crawl mode, the suspension just jacks all the way up. But which one did better?
You know, this one's bigger and heavier, and you can really feel the mass. I would say the best way to describe these two is this one's more of an overlander, and that one's more of an off-roader. Not that this one's bad, but you can really feel that weight both going up and going down. Look at that articulation. Look how high that is. I mean, the departure angle on that is crazy. I would say there's at least a foot, maybe a foot and a half now between the wheel and the wheel well. It looks like, it's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. I've never seen something jack itself up so high. By the way, Tommy's going up. He wanted to see what it was like, so I had him go up there just for fun. Yeah, that's the thing. If you just stay on the power, it will figure it out. So locking diffs would be great because you would never have that moment of hesitation, so you really couldn't get stranded. But if you just stay on the power, that thing will figure it out. And that's really the cool thing about the terrain management that they've come up with. It's smart. Well, what'd you think?
Well, the suspension keeps freaking out. It keeps thinking that you're bottoming out on an obstacle.
Yeah.
And it goes into extended mode.
I know.
Which is too high up, so there's like no articulation. So I dropped it down and it keeps jacking me up on the really hard stuff. So it's trying to outsmart me a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot heavier.
So here's the thing, Tommy. People are terrified of Land Rovers, right? Because they say they're unreliable, they're expensive to repair, and they'll leave them stranded. And we've spent $5,000 and $7,000 on two vehicles that have been relatively reliable.
Well, I would say dead reliable, but here's the thing. Even though we've had a lot of good luck, I still think they're not nearly as well made as some of the Japanese competitors. But you gotta go in it with a different mindset. Don't think that you're spending $5 and $7 grand on a truck. Figure you're spending 10 and 12 grand on a truck. So you're spending more money over a course of 5-10 years than you would expect just outright, but you're still, even at 12 grand, significantly below the price of like a Lexus GX or a Toyota Land Cruiser. So I think you still come out ahead even with the additional cost of maintenance.
You know, as much as I love Lexus and Toyota, right? These things just have so much more character. And let's face it, when something breaks down, you get involved in it more, which means you fall in love with it more. Yeah, high maintenance means high love. Well guys, thanks for watching. Remember, check out tfltruck.com for more news, views, and of course,
real world off-roading Land Rover reviews.
See you guys next time. Ciao.